Airports. Tyler Bond hated them. They were a necessary evil in his job, but he hated them. They were hurting his marriage. They held masses of people waiting to be airlifted to their destination like cattle and treated like cattle. Maybe he should rearrange his thoughts on the matter and just accept that things were the way they were, and he was being paid well to put up with it. 10 years ago, he had to stand in line to check in, then stand in line at security, and then stand in line to board the plane, where you would have to stand in line again, waiting for those in front of you to stow their luggage in the overhead compartments, while the line slowly moved to your seat at the back of the plane. Now he didn't have to talk to anyone if he didn't want to. As a seasoned traveler, he no longer had his luggage checked. TSA drastically reduced wait times at security at most airports. His years of cross-country travel once a month plus another shorter trip each month solidified his status with his favorite airlines, where he usually no longer had to sit in the back of the plane and could board after first-class passengers. His credit card even gave him lounge access, which was quite nice there at the Miami airport. Although the experience was much better now, he still didn't like it. Today, however, in the lounge, Veronica, an attractive middle-aged woman who looked several years younger than him, wearing a frilly dress with a deep neckline partially covered by a cardigan, was chatting with him about her recent travels. Near the end of the conversation, she let the cardigan not cover so much. The drool flowed. He also happily and candidly shared his own stories of travel and war, and at the end of their conversation, she handed him a business card. He glimpsed the card, not wanting to take his eyes off Veronica, and discovered that she was also from Denver, which led to a few more minutes of conversation. She had one more stop to make before heading home. It was probably for the best. After chatting pleasantly, they dispersed to their gate. Was she flirting with him? Maybe. Maybe. He wished he'd realized it while they were talking. Decades of marriage had dulled his senses to flirting. Shit. Not that anything could or should have come of this. He'd been 100% faithful during his 26 years of marriage, and he wasn't about to change that. This was one of his cross-country trips, and despite his dislike of airports, he was in a good mood because of his conversation with Veronica and some success on his trip that would pave the way for an extra bonus next quarter. He had just boarded his plane, in a larger economy plus seat to return home, when his phone rang. He was just about to put it into airplane mode when it happened. It was his wife, Rebecca. Sigh. It was very early in Denver for her to wake up, let alone call. Given the morning hour, he wondered if it was important. It probably was. His finger hovered over the phone to answer, but still he turned the phone off. If it was one of his children, he'd answer the phone, of course, but whatever this bat wife of his wanted could wait. He recognized that the journey that had begun 10 years ago, though limited, had not been easy for them, but it shouldn't have caused so much controversy. He was rarely gone more than 6 nights a month, but it seemed to have become too much. Women. He wished his wife was more understanding. When he had told her about his new position years ago and the increased salary and bonus, his wife had practically shoved him out the door, and then she had welcomed him and his money home with open arms and legs. Now, despite his attempts to buy her wine and dinner more often and spend more time with her, she has become distant. Recently, his boss told him that if he accepted a new position that required more travel, he could make even more money. He did not mention this offer to his wife. It would not have served a good purpose. This whole situation saddened him, but he had his children, who were fantastic. He loved his children. His daughter Jamie had just started pharmacy school in the fall, and his son Mike was in summer school to get a head start on his first year of engineering, just like his father. Both parents were, predictably, proud. He missed attending their events and missed having them tangled up under his feet. He guessed Rebecca thought so too, as she seemed sad lately. Whatever their current problems were, they had raised 2 exceptional children. Smart, funny, hard-working, selfless, and with a sense of humor. Over the years, they had gained many additional joys. He wanted to see them more often. Since the kids now had their own place nearby, he thought about downsizing the big house. Rebecca didn't want to hear about it. In addition to her work at the hospital as one of their financial executives, she served on several charitable boards, and the house, the neighborhood, and the neighbors fit her image. A little extra maintenance on the house and yard compared to the smaller house was one of the sacrifices Tyler had to make for his wife's social standing. Sigh. The flight was languishing, as it often did, or rather, he was languishing on a long flight. He wasn't in the mood to watch a movie, and he had hardly slept during the trip, so he decided to close his eyes for a few minutes. He was awakened by the sound of landing. He was surprised that he had slept for almost the entire trip. He turned his phone back on, and it looked like something had exploded. Voicemails and messages from everyone close to him. He called his daughter. "Oh my God, Daddy, thank God you called." "Jamie, you knew I was on the plane. What's going on? Everyone's been trying to call me, but no one's told me anything." "Well, I'm not going to say anything now. Stop by my place since it's on your way home. Mike will be here too." "Jamie, you can't leave me like this. Are you and your brother okay? Is your mom okay? Is anybody hurt?" "I'm sorry, Daddy, it's just a big mess. No one got hurt. Well, no one we love. I'll explain everything when I see you." "What the hell?" Tyler made it from Denver International Airport to his daughter's house near the university in record time. He knocked hastily on the door, and she was nearly in tears when he entered. He saw his son sitting solemnly in a chair. "What's wrong, baby?" "Oh, Daddy, we're so sorry. It's a huge mess." Mike spoke up. "It's like a big bazaar." "Tell me, what happened?" Jamie continued. "We didn't want any of this to happen. It's just like a snowball effect." "What exactly did you not want to happen?" Jamie. "Well, we wanted some of it to happen, but not like this." "Honey, you haven't told me anything yet. Just tell me." Okay. It started about a month ago when you were on your last trip to Boston. I was going to stop by to visit my mom during lunch, and as I approached, I saw a Tesla pulling into your garage, which was weird. I didn't recognize the car and didn't know who it could have been. From the street, I could see the lights on in the house, and from the way the shadows were moving, I could see someone walking towards the garage. I called my mom's cell phone, but she didn't answer. I waited a few more minutes and called her again. When she answered, I asked if she was home, and she said she was still at work and would talk to me later. Obviously, I suspected that was a lie, so I hung up and watched the house some more, wondering what to do. After a while, I moved my car out of sight and snuck over to peek out the garage window. Mom's car was there along with the Tesla. I was furious. I went back to my car and called Mike and told him what I had seen. I wanted to know who was with Mom. Fueled by anger, I spent the first 6 hours waiting for him to leave, and then Mike came and watched until he left at 7 o'clock the next morning. Mike followed him to work in a large office building in Cherry Creek, walked in a few minutes later, and asked the security guard if he knew the man who had just walked in. He gave Mike the name, and Mike called me. We didn't know what to do. I called my mom the next morning, unhappy that she hadn't returned my call, and I've been cool with her ever since. On your last trip, we followed up, and the same thing happened. So Mike and I decided to do something about it. Mike stepped in. I was there when you checked the smoke detectors a few weeks ago, and when I saw the detector in the garage, I came up with an idea that we thought was funny at the time. I guess it's no longer funny now. We were afraid to tell you because we knew you'd want to catch them red-handed and probably kill the bastard and end up killing Mom, too, accidentally or intentionally, and go to jail. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to figure out a way to piss them off and embarrass them. I suggested that Jamie sneak into the garage around midnight and cause one of those unexpected sparks that have been known to happen to electric cars from time to create enough smoke to set off the alarm. Since the smoke detectors were in good working order, I didn't think anything would happen other than the fire department showing up. I guess that means you didn't know there was a heat detector in the garage and not a smoke detector, Tyler said. Mike had a surprised look on his face. Oh, crap. That's why it took so long for the alarm to go off. Tyler shook his head. Jamie interjected. We thought having to have the fire department come would be embarrassing, but it wasn't enough, so I kind of stepped in too. Tyler looked stunned as all the different implications of what the kids had told him began to come to him. He asked, It looks like my marriage burned to the ground. Is our house in one piece? Jamie replied, What? Oh, yeah. Well, for the most part. Oh, my goodness! I visited the house after Mom left for work both times, and both times one of Mom's Magnum wine bottles was in the trash. I know she likes to keep the bottle cold most of the time, so this seemed like the perfect opportunity to compound their embarrassment. It's very easy to buy Viagra or its equivalent online these days, so I ordered some. I'm studying to be a pharmacist after all, and with my chemistry degree, it wasn't hard to turn the pills into liquid. Tyler interjected, "You didn't." "I'm afraid I did. I snuck home yesterday afternoon. I looked at the wine fridge and my mom had already opened her bottle of Magnum, sealed it, and set it down. It turned out to be only a cup or two short, so I poured my mixture in, stirred it, and put it back in, carefully leaving no trace. We thought they'd have to run out of the house when the fire department showed up and he couldn't hide his erection, which would expose her and her lover to all the neighbors." It was Mike's turn. Shortly before midnight, I climbed through the garage window I had opened beforehand. It took some time, but using the charging port on the car and some tools, I was able to create an arc such that the metal around that area became hot. I don't know if his car was malfunctioning or what, but suddenly a sheaf of sparks started. I knew it would set off a smoke alarm, at least that's what I thought, so I got the hell out of there. Apparently, after I left, the battery caught fire. I think it did because before the fire department could get there, not only his car caught fire, but my mom's car caught fire as well. By this time, the alarm system in the house had gone crazy and the whole neighborhood could hear it. Jamie said, "You know how Mom freaks out when she's upset? It's like her brain just shuts down. That's where the story gets interesting." More interesting? More interesting than my wife cheating on me and my house burning down. Jamie continued. "We told you the house didn't burn down." Oh, great. Anyway, in the few minutes I was allowed to talk to my mom this morning, she told me she jumped out of bed when she heard the alarm. She shook her lover, Eric, but he didn't wake up. She knew he had a lot to drink and couldn't wake him up. She thought he was dead and became hysterical. She called 911 from her home phone and started yelling, "Fire! Call an ambulance!" She then grabbed his ankles and began dragging him out of the bedroom toward the exit, not realizing or thinking about the fact that they were both bare asses. He was too heavy for her to get down the stairs, so she kept dragging him. Again, she wasn't thinking, so he was lying face down. Remember the doormat nail at the entrance to your bedroom that popped up enough to snag one of my socks a few months ago when I was visiting? Well, it looks like either you didn't hammer it in, or the other one popped back out, because guess what? Mom was dragging Eric, and it was heavy enough, or the nail popped back out even more and caught Eric. That's where the fact that he drank all that Viagra and wine comes into play. Not only did the carpet nail cut his testicles, but it cut his entire stomach and face. Since the house was pretty dark and he was unconscious, his mom didn't know it and kept dragging him down the stairs. Bop, 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 down the stairs. I almost felt sorry for the dude. In addition to his 3-foot scratch that bled profusely from his groin, he has carpet burns from his testicles to his nose that must have burst when he fell from the bottom step onto the tiled kitchen floor. Clap! I'm sure being dragged across the tile through the front door wasn't very pleasant either, especially when his head went over the threshold, hit the concrete porch, and rolled down the stairs to the sidewalk. Bop, bop, clap. Looks like he's got road rash and a nasty facial wound. Tyler somehow didn't feel too bad about it. Mike took over the story. The house alarm must have woken up the rest of the neighbors because there seemed to be quite a few onlookers when Mom dragged her lover, both with bare asses, out the front door in front of everyone. Timothy from across the street even videotaped the scene on his phone and sent it to me. "Here, check it out." Tyler couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was video on Mike's phone of Rebecca nakedly pacing from the front of the house, and sure enough, Eric's head was bouncing off the concrete as he walked down the steps while Rebecca continued to drag him. Either her adrenaline was really kicking in or she was stronger than he'd realized. The ambulance and fire department arrived immediately afterward. He watched as the crews ran into the house to open the garage door and began hosing down everything in and around the garage. The EMTs came over to his naked wife with an emergency blanket to cover her and turned Eric over. Mike told him, apparently he had a device in his electric car that sends an alert to his home phone when something weird happens to the car. Apparently, Eric's wife, Francine, got the message and, seeing that her husband's car was parked at someone's house instead of at the airport where it was supposed to be, rushed over to deal with it. As Tyler continued to watch, he saw that they hadn't been able to revive Eric. He was alive but unconscious. They brought in a gurney from the ambulance, but before they could strap him in, Francine appeared and flipped it over, causing Eric to fly, beak first, onto the sidewalk. He's going to need more than a few stitches to deal with this new cut on his head. Should we take pity on him or something? Tyler couldn't recall ever seeing anyone so angry. Francine landed a few good punches to Eric's groin before they were able to pull her off of him, who continued to thrash around. Rebecca stood aghast as at least a dozen or so socially educated neighbors watched the tragicomedy unfold. Francine lunged at Rebecca, but instead of hitting her, she pulled the blanket off, again leaving Rebecca naked for at least a minute until another blanket could be found. Seeing his wife naked in their front yard, Tyler thought, "Damn, I'm going to miss those breasts." However, the neighbors certainly didn't miss them or her groin landing strip. It was safe to say that her preoccupation with her intimate places was no longer an, private matter. Shame. When the police arrived, the flames seemed to be mostly under control, except for Eric's car, which was shooting sparks and smoldering. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, yelled at the police to arrest Rebecca. On what charge? No one knew, but the officer took Rebecca, clearly shaken, to the back of the patrol car just to keep her away from Francine and the gawkers. Jamie said, "We knew Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't know she was the DA's daughter. Apparently she or he had enough power to get her mom taken to the station and put in an interrogation room for the rest of the night, wearing only this blanket. They let her go around 6 o'clock in the morning when she tried to call you, but you didn't answer. And some people say God is unmerciful," Tyler thought. The problem was that because Eric didn't wake up right away, they did a tox screen on him, and the only weird thing they found was trace amounts of Viagra. When his wife heard this, she was furious because he has a heart condition and would never take something like that. At least that's what she said. The medics said it was a good thing there was a fire, because it meant he got to the hospital fast enough that they could prevent him from going into a coma. Otherwise, things could have been really bad. Tyler asked, "Even worse?" Mike interjected. "The police put Mom back in the interview room, and this morning the cops came to the house to try to gather some evidence, but the firemen dumped the bottle and glasses on the floor during the fire, shattering them. With all the water, bottle destruction, and wine residue, there is no uncontaminated evidence to collect. I went in earlier, and the only thing the police saw there was a blood trail down the steps and out the door. I suspect they're just shaking my mom down for questioning now. Everyone thinks he took Viagra, even though he shouldn't have, and without any evidence, I'll be surprised if they hold Mom for much longer. Besides, they were able to get the Tesla out of the garage. Mom and Francine were all over the news this morning. It wasn't very pleasant." Tyler asked, "Where is your mom now?" Jamie said, "She's still at the police station. They said they would call us when we could go and get her." "I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you instead of trying to get even. We were so angry and only made a bad situation worse." While his kids looked horrified, a smile began to slowly spread across Tyler's face. He stood up and said, "I appreciate what you guys tried to do, I really do. It means a lot to me. Honestly, I don't think you guys made anything worse. All things considered, I think it worked out pretty well. I'm going home now. Your mother will need you both. I'll let you decide who picks her up from the station. It won't be me." They understood. On the way home, Tyler stopped by the bank and transferred half of their bills to a new account in his name only. He would take care of the rest of the finances closer to tonight or tomorrow. He stopped at the local market and picked up some garbage bags to take his clothes to the dry cleaners because he suspected that everything in the house now smelled like smoke. As he approached the house, he didn't pay much attention to the fire damage, but the blood trail across the porch and down the steps was clearly visible. He smiled. Entering the front door, which was closed but unlocked, the blood trail stretched up the steps. Hey. The part of the kitchen leading to the garage looked like a war zone. Paying no further attention to the blood, he went into the bedroom and bagged all his clothes to take to the dry cleaners. His insurance company would get the bill. He saw that the bed hadn't been made, and the thought saddened him for a moment, but only for a moment. He knew what he was going to do. Divorce the bitch was the obvious starting point, split the finances, find an apartment, travel more, and use his newfound free time to be with the kids more often and have a lot more fun. He asked if Mike could forward him the video so it could be forwarded to local news stations. Rebecca's volunteer organizations would surely be proud to have one of their board members raise their visibility in this way. As he was loading the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up. They asked to see some identification. Hearing what had happened, and perhaps even having been there before or seen the video, one of the officers looked embarrassed but asked anyway. "Are you going to be okay?" All of the day's events went over and over in Tyler's head like one of those old-fashioned wheels that people spin on game shows. When the wheel in his head stopped at Veronica's business card, a wide smile appeared on Tyler's face. "I'll be fine, officer. Rest assured, I'll be fine."